8radio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson. You're watching the 505 Racing Show. Welcome to another night of race talk. See the chat room starting to fill up. Good talk. Yeah, it was some interesting stuff. I missed the Whelen Modified Tour event here on Long Island this past weekend. I have mixed emotions. I'm kind of glad I did, kind of glad I wish I would have went. But anyway, you can't go backwards. But I did go to the Marty Himes Museum, the Himes Museum of Racing Nostalgia, for his annual Old Timers reunion. And I'll tell you what, that place was jam-packed with guys who raced in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even current racers. It was good to see some of the old guys. A bunch of old figure eight guys got together. We were talking in the corner. It's always good to talk old figure eight racing with guys. Richie Shea was there. Was talking about the old days with Fred Dunlop, who drove the 77, whose dad back in the 70s had a whole slew of figure eight cars. Remember the first time I went to Fred Dunlop's house, I went to pick up a car or a truck or something, and we're driving down the road, and I said, that must be the house, because they lived on a dead end, and the whole block was just lined with figure eight stock cars. What memories that was, just talking to Fred about those times, and John Rigney, another guy that was a little group talking figure eight racing, sharing stories of Islip in the 70s with the 70, 80 car, figure eight cars in the pits, and how I started 33rd in a Consi once. For those who don't know what a Consi is, it's a non-qualifiers race, which was my home, it seemed like. We had almost 80 figure eight cars, and we had 20 or 25 in a heat. They had 4 heats. They took 5, and then they had 2 Consis, where they took 2, and I was 33rd in a Consi. My chances of winning a race were not going to happen, 0, and my chances of qualifying, the odds didn't change. It was still 0. But back then it was a matter of, at least from my point of view, it was a matter of just going out and have a good time. Yeah, so you got a couple of rounds of practicing, and did my 10-lap heat race and my 10-lap Consi, took my fire suit off and rolled it up in a ball and went and watched the rest of the show. It was a good time. But as WJ is saying in the chat room, it was a good crowd. And it seems to get bigger and bigger every year. But some guys that were there last year weren't there this year. Red Rayner, who had passed away, we talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago. There was a little jar set up to help them out, and donations to the Leukemia Foundation, and of course the Himes Museum jug, which I'll tell you what, and talking to Marty, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, talking to Marty, he says he doesn't get enough people to come to the museum during the year at all to cover 1 month's electric bill. And I was kind of surprised at that. But he sat and talked to me. He goes, you'll get somebody that comes by, wants to check it out. Somebody will call, then they'll come for a few hours. It's not a place you can do in a few hours. You got to spend the whole day there. And there's a lot of stuff, just a lot of stuff there that it's just amazing. And I had believe it or not, I have a couple of sections in the Himes Museum. In the fire suit, there's a room with fire suits. I was pleasantly surprised to see my first Whelen Modified Tour pit road uniform hanging alongside, actually with my daughter's EKARA championship fire suit from 2001. It was just, I was, I can't explain the feeling. It's just what I didn't expect it. I know I have a bunch of shirts in another room and hats and things from the Featherlight Modified days and an old time trial board that I took out of the dumpster at Thompson after the last race of the Featherlight Modified Tour Series, and that's in there too. So it's yeah, Mr. Freeport, you got it right. I've been there, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen or a dozen times. I've been there a lot. And every time I go, I was like, wait, this wasn't here last year. And Marty nods his head, yeah, it was. You just get focused on other things. But the Hyams Museum, you got to get there. You got to get there. And this is what this guy does. And stuff that some drivers will throw in the trash. If you bring it to Marty, he'll find a spot for it. And I always bring something. And this year I brought my NASCAR Winston Racing Series shirt. My first shirt as an official. It's back in '97, so that's some 19 years ago, 18 years ago. And I gave it to Marty, and he had hung it up so everybody could see it there. So nice. Yeah, a picture with me with a checker flag would be priceless. I have one from Wall. I do. I have a checker flag picture from Wall in the Green Flag driving experience. So, yeah, that would be priceless. So. It's good to see Mr. Freeport on tonight. I guess Mr. Donald is busy. So anyway, you guys crack me up. So anyway, the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour was at Riverhead Raceway this weekend. And basically it went like this. Justin Bonsignore was the winner, taking a sweep of this year's Riverhead Tour races. Doug Colby second, Chase Dowling was third, Donnie Lee was fourth, Eric Goodale fifth, Tom Rogers Jr. finished sixth from the pole, Woody Pitkat was seventh, Ryan Preece was eighth, Todd Zegedy ninth, and Jeremy Goodale was 10th. Bonsignore's 2015 sweep made him only the fifth driver in 31 years of Whelen Modified Tour racing to sweep a season at the Long Island Quarter Mile. From what I understand, he did a really nice job, and that's a tough place to pass. It's an even tougher place to race modifieds in. But I'll tell you what, he's got that place figured out, Justin Bonsignore, and some of the local guys as well who made the show. And it's. I personally feel that 28 cars there is a little bit as much. I think there should be 24, but who am I? NASCAR makes the rules, and that's what they do. They start 28. And speaking of rules, I wake up Sunday morning, and all over social media, all over the place, there's comments about how Timmy Solomino was penalized 2 laps for changing the spark plug. The spark plug broke before qualifying, during qualifying, but it was noticed after qualifying. And they were penalized 2 laps at the start of the event for working on their car, an impound, I guess it is. And so was somebody else, James Savali, who drove the number 13 car. He was also penalized 2 laps for infraction as well. And what they had them do at the start of the race, go into the infield and wait to be told to go after the leaders did 2 laps. Now, I personally, I'm not knocking anybody here, please don't think I am, but my question is this: how safe was that to have these cars pull out of the infield in front of the field, or even in back of the field, and the way they spread out, 28 cars, I'm sure it didn't take long for it to get spread out. And with today's technology and transponders, why couldn't they start last, number one, and get 2 laps taken away from them? Would have been a little bit safer. And two, in regards to this 2-lap penalty at the start of the event on an impound race, where did that rule come from? That was the questions being asked in social media. So I just happened to have a rule book. And I went through the rule book. I didn't read line by line, page by page, so maybe I could have missed it. But anything I saw in regards to working on your car or changing a motor or rear or shock or anything was rear to field. So the question was, where did this rule come from? And there were a lot of people that were upset in the social media, and a lot of people that were blaming the local track officials who have nothing to do with this. It's a touring series. Basically, when a touring series comes to your local racetrack, you basically hand them the key, it's their racetrack. Yeah, your local division is going to race and your local officials are going to officiate that, but it's a traveling show. It's a touring series. They bring their own officials, their own tech equipment, their own scales, everything. Their own people, officials. They're all employees of NASCAR. They're paid by NASCAR. But they're directed by the series director as to what to do and what not to do. And this is a call I was sure that was made by the series director, Jimmy Wilson, based on his working knowledge of the rules. I'm not saying he doesn't know the rules. He's a series director. He's worked his way up to that capacity, but I can't find it in the rule book. Again, I'm not knocking NASCAR. I don't know. And WJ, who was there, sitting in between turns 1 and 2, I started to study there. They were told to go sooner. Now, you know what happens is the official in the tower, the race director, tells a spotter official who tells the spotters for those 2 cars, you could go now. Now, they relay that to their driver. You're doing sub 12-second laps. That just took 4 seconds to explain. So you know what? A quarter or a third of a lap just went by. Bad decision. Very bad decision. There were other ways to handle that. And if you want to give a 2-lap penalty at your discretion, that 2-lap penalty can be done in the computer on the transponder. That's all I'm saying. Something to think about if it ever happens again. Go in the transponder, you could edit. And it'll turn out red, and and you have to make a little note why it's red. You take the 2 laps away. Because I would hate to see somebody get a wrecked race car or a wrecked body because of a decision like that. Again, I'm not knocking NASCAR. I'm just trying to say what should be done. Should be done constructive criticism in a polite way, in a very polite way. Anyway. So, what do we got going on? Let's see. We got a bunch of stuff going on. Headed to Bethel this weekend. Bethel has some good stuff. It's an antique show, as they call it. So they got some good stuff going on. Bethel Speedway up in, they say it's in Bethel. Some people say Woodstock. The town sign that you go through to get there is White Lake. There's another town sign that says Smallwood. But anyway, Bethel, I'm headed up there. We're headed up there with the Long Island Need for Speed crew, Kevin Basic, myself, and we're going to do some race watching. We're going to have a good time at Bethel. Last time we went up to Bethel, it rained out. And we got the call about 40 minutes out. Don't come, it's raining. Anyway, so this past weekend, the Bethel Modifieds feature went to Ed Doschenhausen from Danbury, Connecticut. He was the modified feature winner. The 358 Sportsman feature winner was Rick Mill from Middletown, New York. The Legend feature winner was Teddy Hodgkins from Danbury, Connecticut. The Bandolero feature finish was David French from Rome, PA. And the Pro Stock feature was won by Kenny Atkins, and he's out of Grahamville, New York. And the Street Stock feature was won by Walt Henry from Maybrook, New York. So Bethel Speedway. If you've never been there, interesting little racetrack. It's 2 drag strips with a sharp turn. And I remember the first time I went there was no backstretch wall. And Bobby Sater spun coming out of 2. Bobby Sater of Long Island spun out of 2, went over the berm, through the bushes, drove up the street, drove through the pit gate, drove through the pits, came back out on the racetrack. I could not believe it when I saw that. If somebody would have said that's what they did, I don't know. But it is a long ride from here, but my record for getting up there and back is 2.5 hours. But after being, you leave first thing in the morning, you get up there, and as WJ says, you might want to stay overnight, but our staff's troopers, we're gonna make the trip, the day trip. We're gonna go up and come back, up and come back. There's something, we'll check that out. Yeah, anyway, we're going to take a break, and we come back. We'll talk about some other finishes and other racetracks across the country, or at least across the Northeast, when we come back.
Hey, this is Chris Lesdick, and if InRavio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Murphy Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you're punching the. But if you have this bracelet from InRavio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
For over 60 years, Hanson Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hanson Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit HansonCarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hanson Carpet has got you covered. The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, InRavio can get your message out there. And we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is InRavio.com.
Hey. Sorry about that, folks. It was just a short nap, so killer. New Egypt Speedway, Billy Pouch Jr. was the winner in the modifieds this past weekend. New Egypt Speedway down South Jersey. Good place to go watch a race as well. Remember when our place was pavement? Went down there in the 70s with the modern stocks, and they wouldn't let me race. Wow, that sounds familiar. They wouldn't let me race because I didn't have a date on my fuel cell block. In fact, I didn't have a fuel cell. I had a gas tank. And they wouldn't let me race after I went all the way down there. I guess I should have read the rules. But that's what happens when you don't check things out ahead of time. That was back in probably 78, long time ago. And down at the London Waterford Speed Bowl in the NASCAR Weekly All-American Series, the modifieds, James Monahan was the winner there with Ted Christopher second, Keith Rocco third. And with the limited sportsman, we had Corey Coates, who's the winner, followed by Norman Root, and Ed Gertsch was third. In the mini stocks, we had Lawrence Loomis Jr., Ray Christian III second, Mark Parioni third. And in the SK Lights, the feature was won by Corey Batty. Joe Farnego was second, and Paul Buzzell was third. So another place, New Egypt. Got some news coming out of Long Island. Sal Liccardi Jr. Looks like he'll be back in the seat of a modified. In fact, there'll be a two-car team. Sal Liccardi will be picking up two cars owned by the Basic Brothers down in Pennsylvania. We'll be bringing those cars back to Long Island, getting them ready to go racing, and either run it as an SK mod or a sport mod somewhere. So hopefully Snoogie Head, I like that name better than Silverback. Snoogie Head, we'll be getting some laps in and some competitive racing and make everybody happy or unhappy, depending on how you want to look at it. But Sal Liccardi will be back in the seat of a car. So that's good. I had the opportunity to talk with Sal at the Himes Museum at the reunion yesterday. Sal's all excited, as is the rest of the team, as going forward. So we'll have some fun with that. Sal back in our Sal, the son of modified driver, the late Sal Liccardi Sr., who was a guest on our show via the telephone from his hospital bed at the time. He was very ill. And we talked about that. Sal and I talked about that at the reunion and how when we ended the talk, I thanked Mr. Liccardi for taking the time to be on the show and to talk to us on the phone. And he got all emotional. He got all choked up, at the time. And he said, "Thanks for remembering us old guys." Now, how do you forget the guys who blazed the trail for us younger guys? Now I'm an old guy myself, but we talked about that. And then Sal Liccardi Sr. Lost his battle not too soon after that. So, but it was good talking. It was good. Like yesterday, it was just so many people that we talked to throughout the day, and it was all good. Georgie Wagner he ran at Ice Speedway, Freeport, Riverhead, from 1962 to 1982. It was nice talking with him. Dottie Mann, a wife of Johnny Mann, who was a Long Island standout in the 50s and the 60s. Dottie was a scorer. She was a scorer for 50 years. And talking to her, and she did USAC and NASCAR and ARDC, and the list was endless. The series and cars that she scored. And she said something to me that one of the NASCAR Wheel Modified Tour scorers said to me back before transponders, when you're hand scoring and line scoring and everything. And she said, I didn't need to see the numbers. I knew what the cars looked like, because back then modifieds were modifieds. They all looked different. She goes, I could tell by the color of the car, the body. She goes, and at times I could tell by the way they sat in their car, in their seat. So it was interesting talking to her. So Fast Al Marino walking around. It was always good to see Al, always good for a story. And we sat down and we talked about some of the stuff that we talked about. And Al was funny. He said, from the time he woke up Saturday to the time he went to bed Saturday night or Sunday morning, he hated me. But from Sunday to Friday, I was one of his best friends. It was a love-hate relationship. But he made a point. He said to somebody, you can't like the officials, whether it's in baseball or football. You can't like they're the guys trying to stop you from doing what you like to do. And what he said was, he said there was a Saturday night. He shared this story. It was a Saturday night, and him and I went at it. Him and I went at it over something that he did to another competitor. And you knew there were going to be fines and suspensions and all of that kind of good stuff. And then Sunday morning, there was a plan to go to the barbecue at his house that Sunday afternoon. And Sunday morning, he called me up and he said, when you come later, bring whatever. You can bring ice, I don't know, something like that. I said, you still want me to go after Saturday night, after last night? He said, that was last night. We'll see you later. But that's just how he was. And that's how a lot of people were in those days. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, because I was one of those guys that held it. I held that grudge. A guy would take me out and send me in the fence or whatever. We'd have an accident. We'd have an argument on Saturday. And I'm carrying it over, not just for like weeks, like months, years, decades. It was one of those things that was hard to let go. But in talking to the other drivers, they said, back in the day, they had those same kind of issues. But when push came to shove, you needed help, you needed somebody, they were always there, everybody worked it out. So it was a good day. I kind of wish there was two of those a year. I really do. I know people are looking, wow, two of them. You have two of them. And then hopefully, with the new ownership here at the Riverhead Raceway on Long Island, with the new ownership and new management, we could bring that reunion back to where it belongs and at a racetrack. And the cars could do some parade laps and drive around the racetrack. Some of the older cars and some of these guys who haven't sat behind the wheel of a race car in years and years and years have the opportunity to go do that and have some fun and let the fans see the old cars and have them parked on the midway and have them all set up to sign autographs and all of that kind of good stuff. So I'm hoping that could be arranged, because it used to be that way. It used to be that way, and for some reason it stopped being. So it's one of those things. Hopefully we can bring that back in 2016. And there's a lot of things coming back in 2016. And I'm for one, I'm excited about the next season here on Long Island racing. I think racing is going to come to another level. I think it's going to take time, And I'm not saying that the present or past owners of our Long Island racetrack were not good promoters. They were awesome promoters. And I just think what happens is you get caught up in paradigms. And for those who don't know what a paradigm is you do it that way because you always did it that way. And that's one of the things that I've always said, that you have to change. You have to change with the times. And it's a whole different era. And there's the cost to do these things, of race cars. Anybody that's ever raced a car, owned a car, they know what the cost that's involved with putting a car on a racetrack week after week after week, and the sacrifices that are made to make that happen. And when you look at, and I'm going to pick on purse structures, and I'm not saying just this for Long Island, I'm saying this all over the place. When you look at purse structures, a promoter's not going to be able to foot the whole bill themselves. No matter how many people come in the front gate, no matter how many teams come in through the back gate, you need sponsorship. And in order to do that, you have to be sponsor friendly. And what do I mean by that? And I'm always talking about this sponsor stuff, but what do I mean by being sponsor friendly? And I'm going to share a story, and I might have told this story on this show maybe more than once. I'm going to tell it again. It's about, I'm going to say, 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, 11, more like 24, 25. And there was a sponsor who put up a lot of money to have their night at the racetrack. And the following day, we're at a restaurant, a bunch of us, there's maybe about 8 or 10 of us were at this restaurant, and that sponsor was at that same restaurant. And the sponsor comes over and he says, because one of the people at the table won the ring, won one of the features. And he goes, oh, so you're spending some of that big money I put up for you guys? And the guy goes, not for nothing. He goes, our division only saw $50 of that, XYZ number of thousands of dollars. And he goes, no, stop. And he just happened to have, because you used to get, when you pulled in the back gate, you used to get a payoff sheet, what the payoffs were, how much was a sponsor, there was another column for this money, there was another column, and you got your total purse. And he showed him, and the guy was like livid. And from my recollection, that sponsor has never been back as a sponsor, kind of turned him off. And of course he called and it was explained where the monies went and how it went, and that's okay if that's your procedure. But I'm thinking some of that should have been either told up front or asked up front. How is my sponsorship dollar going to be sold? How's it going to work? And it wasn't. So you have to be sponsor friendly. And because the purses just, they're not growing. They're not growing. Talking to some of these guys that ran into six, I was talking to a driver who ran into 60s, and he said to me, I was running 5 nights a week, and that was my full-time job. I got a 60-40 split. And I'm looking at him like, what? He goes, yeah, sometimes I got a 50-50 depending who I was driving for, but it was, I got paid. And he goes, and the only way I lost my ride is because some young guy with money came and told my car owner, you don't have to pay me, and I have a sponsor for tires and fuel. So here we go. Again, the key word there is sponsors. And without sponsors in any sport, you're not going to make it happen. And what you need to do with these sponsors is you need to keep them happy so they keep coming back. Yeah, there's some perennial sponsors that go to all your local racetracks, and they're always coming back, always coming back. And there's some that kind of fade away. And you hear it when you're walking around saying, whatever happened to Acme Corporation? They used to sponsor us. Maybe we can get them back. Oh, somebody should call. But the call is either never made or people know why the sponsorship fell through the cracks. But in talking to these old guys, they said that they were racing for purses back in the 70s that were bigger than the purses that we're racing for today. And why is that? How does that happen? I don't know. My background is business development marketing, and I don't know. I don't know how that could happen, but it happens. And you look at some other series. A lot of people blame NASCAR for bad purses. It has nothing to do with NASCAR. I'm going to reiterate this again every time I think about it. NASCAR doesn't come up with a purse structure. NASCAR goes to a race operator or a track operator. We'd like to have an event at your racetrack, or vice versa. The track operator goes to NASCAR. I'd like to have an event at my racetrack, and they negotiate a contract. They pay their sanctioning fees, whatever the case may be, and they decide what the purse is. But it has nothing to do with NASCAR. It's the track operators. So you look at the dirt series. I'm all of a sudden my eyes opened up to dirt racing, which I saw dirt racing at Cottage Grove Speedway in the 80s. I'd been to Volusia County in the 90s. I've been to, let's see, some of the places I've been to. There was a dirt track in Florida that I went to, up in North Florida. I don't remember the name. And I wasn't hooked. New Egypt, I wasn't hooked. And all of a sudden, I'm behind the scenes. I'm not sitting in the grandstands as a fan. I'm behind the scenes. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, this is something else. And then when you hear the purses, that these dirt series guys are getting paid, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. And that's why some teams travel hundreds of miles to go to races. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. And I, for one, can't understand why in the NASCAR Weekly All-American Series that some of the payouts aren't a little better. Yeah, I know the back gate's got to cover that, and if you don't have enough people in the back gate, it's going to be tough to cover. But what you need to do is take a look at it and say, well, why is it? And not as a race team, but as a car owner, you need to worry about your own destiny. You need to take care of yourself when it comes to that matter. Don't count on that personally. You need to go out and make it happen, and you need to go out and find sponsors for your team. You need to keep them happy. You need to keep coming back. And if you can make that happen, then not only will you make some money racing, at least you'll be covering your expenses. And with that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the top 3 series and where they were this weekend and what went on there when we come back.
What's up, guys? We're Scare No Fair, and we're here with Enravio. If they catch you at a show with one of these bracelets, you will win $100.
That's a lot of money.
So get a bracelet.
Do whatever it takes to get that. Hit them up online.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Enravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Enravio.com.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Russ Willie. We're some of the Proto Men. If we see you without this bracelet, you get punched in the But if you have this bracelet from Enravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
For over 60 years, Hansen Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hansen Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit HansenCarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hansen Carpet has got you covered.
Hey, we're back. Hey, Mr. Freeport, do you have a ticket? Because if you don't have a ticket, there's no shirty. What did they say? No ticky, no shirty? Mr. Freeport, you cracked me up. Anyway, the Whelen Southern Modified Tour will be at Langley on September 5th. So they have a nice race there. And the Whelen Modified Northern Tour, it's still a 3-team race for the championship with Ryan Preece leading Woody Pitkat by 1 point. And Doug Colby with an outside shot, 25 points back, with some big events coming up with the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, and another trip to Loudon when they're starting 40-plus cars. If not that I wish this on anybody, but if Ryan Preece and Woody Pitkat were to end up finishing near the back and Doug Colby near the front, that would tighten that thing right back up. So it should be interesting coming into the final rounds here. In the Whelen Modified Tour. IndyCar Series, it's hard to believe that the IndyCar Series is done for the season. Scott Dixon, he won the final IndyCar event, and where was he running? He was, Sonoma, sorry about that, in Sonoma. He's got the championship, and the way it ended up was Scott Dixon was the champion in the IndyCar Series after that win at Sonoma, followed by Ryan Hunter-Reay, second in points. Third in points, Charlie Kimball. Tony Kanaan was fourth in points, and Ryan Briscoe was fifth in points there for the final tally for the IndyCar Series. I always thought they ran a little bit longer of a season, but I guess not. And the Sprint Cup Series was off this weekend, and next stop will be Darlington on September 6th. Darlington, always an interesting place to go. The Darlington Stripe, as it's called, and ever since the safer barriers were put in, that stripe is in a lot more cars. Although now it's not concrete anymore. The wall, it's that Armco barrier stuff with the padding behind it. But it's still a good race there at Darlington. It's a good race to watch in person, a good race to watch on TV. It's old-fashioned, good, hard racing. Darlington down in South Carolina. The Xfinity Series was at Road America with Paul Menard taking on the win there with Ryan Blaney second, Brian Scott third, Chase Elliott was fourth, Darrell Wallace Jr. was fifth, followed by Boris Said sixth, Justin Marks seventh, Reagan Smith eighth, and Chris Buescher ninth, and Ty Dillon rounding out the top 10. Ben Rhodes, who had the pole, finished 32nd, 46 laps down, and they will also be in Darlington. They will be running in Darlington on September 5th. Camping World Truck Series, Eric Jones was the winner there. Matt Crafton was second. Ben Kennedy third. Daniel Hemrick was fourth. Alex Tagliani was fifth. He also had the pole. Johnny Sauter was sixth. Cameron Haley seventh. Spencer Gallagher eighth. John Hunter Nemechek ninth. And Cole Custer rounding out the top 10. They're off for a couple of weeks, and their next event will be September 18th at Chicagoland. A little bit of interest here. Now, you should never crash and take something illegally out of your car in front of all the cameras. Jennifer Jo Cobb was caught removing her iPhone from her truck after a wreck in the Camping World Truck Series event at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park this past weekend. And I'm thinking a fine is going to be handed out to Jennifer Jo Cobb for that. You know, she got out of the truck and reached in, and there was her iPhone. It must have fell out of her fire suit or out of her pocket or something. You just don't do those things. I just don't do those things. That's clearly in the rule book. That's clearly in the rule book. You know, it doesn't say what the penalty is. It just says you're not allowed to do that. It's probably one of those P1 level penalties, but you'll probably get a little bit of fine, a little dockage of points. But think about that. You know, let's say you're in a wreck, okay, and you know, God forbid, but you're in a wreck and you start tumbling, and anything you have loose in this race vehicle is going to start slopping around. And it might hit you in the chest, it might hit you in the leg, the foot, the ankle, the hand, somewhere. I mean, you got a helmet, it's not going to hit you in the head. It may, but it won't hurt. But you shouldn't have those things. A rule like that is put into place for a reason. It's put in for a reason. And what you need to do is make sure that you don't do that. And if you're going to have it, you know, you reach in like you're going to get your glove or something, and you put the phone and slide it up your arm or something. You don't take it out and there you go, here's my phone, the whole world to see, all the TV cameras. And I would have loved to hear what the Tower was saying, or Chad Little, the truck series director. I would like to hear what Chad Little, he probably said something like, is that a phone in her hand? Is that a phone? And he's probably looking at everybody in the tower. Is that a phone? And they get the binoculars and look. And I'm sure there was a little chat in the trailer afterwards. Chad Little, the former NASCAR Wheel and Modified Series director, Sprint Cup Series driver, driving for Jack Roush Racing, the old '97 car. His son, Jesse Little, is making his way up through the ranks in his car, running a '97 like his dad did. But you know, it's just, you don't do those things. You know, you just don't do those things, and you don't have. You're on camera. And in the top 3 series, you know you're on camera. You just are in a wreck. The camera's going to be all over you. And Snooki Head thinks it's going to be a slap on the wrist. I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe. But, you know, that decision will be made on Tuesday at the competition conference call. And that letter will go out to her on Tuesday. She'll have it probably Thursday or Wednesday, and let her know what the penalty is. But I'm sure there's going to be something, because they've made a big stink about these things, and you know, who is tweeting in their car, you know, on the racetrack on the red, and who's texting in their car on the caution, and you know, you just don't have that, and I understand why. And I know at the weekly racing series level, especially in race divisions that don't have communication with crew chiefs and drivers. And I know there was ways around that back in the day. I know a certain driver or two and a certain spotter or two who in his division at their local racetrack that didn't have radios. They weren't allowed. Was the rule said radio, and some people did had those Nextel Direct Connects, where the crew chief or the spotter, because they wouldn't have a spotter, could talk to them through the Nextel, and they'd have the little earpiece in. And sometimes the driver had it situated so they could press and talk back. It's the old Direct Connects. You hit it, hey, you out there? Yeah, I am. Well, they couldn't respond as easy because they're driving. There's no button on the steering unless they rigged it that way. We didn't. I mean, the other person I knew didn't. But you could do those things, but it's circumventing a rule. And what it is if you're slick and say, the rule says no radios. Well, was your Nextel Direct Connect a radio, or was it a telephone? There was nothing in the rules that said you can use telephone. Well, eventually that rule was changed, and no electronic communication devices were allowed. And that took that right out. You can't do those things. So, but I don't know, Snooki. I'm thinking it's going to be more than a slap on the wrist. I think there's going to be, 25, 50 points, maybe a little fine. And then if the crew chief had any knowledge of it, the crew chief's going to get a little slap on the wrist too. And all this money, all this fine money, I guess it goes into the point fund. I don't know. In this series, in the top three series, the Sprint Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Camping World Truck Series, I don't know where that fine money goes. I think, just in my opinion, that fine money, I don't believe it should go into a point fund to be distributed amongst the drivers. I think that money, the fine money, should go to a charity, a charitable cause. And for a multitude of reasons, because then everybody's a winner. Yeah, the team, they got hurt in the pocket, whether it's the owner, driver, crew chief, or all three, they got hurt in the pocketbook a little bit. But the charitable organization makes out because they're going to get some monies. Now, you look at some of the fines that in the top three series, especially in the Sprint Cup and Xfinity, they throw around numbers like, that crew chief was fined $50,000 or $25,000. I don't know what some of these crew chiefs make. I know what some make, like Chad Canales, he makes a good, piece of change. But some of them make a lot of money. Some don't. Some don't make any money. And I don't want to call it a back market team, but I'm going to call it a less funded team. Sometimes it's just their expenses are paid. But when you look at that, you look at, wow, where does he get that kind of money, or she? And, is the car owner paying it? Is the car owner just writing one big check out of the corporation? I don't know. I think some of the fines are kind of ridiculous. And I guess that's what I was told when I handed out at a weekly racing series a fine of $10,000 and a 10-year suspension at a weekly racing track. I mean, it didn't stick. After a couple of phone calls down to Jerry Cook, it was like a week and 100. But you had to make a point. I had to make a point to this car owner who was driving me nuts at the time. And I need to know what it's going to be. Why do you need to know today? Well, I need to know if I'm going to start fixing my car tomorrow. Well, you're going to race it eventually. Why don't you start fixing it? I need to know. I said, if you need to know now, it's 10 years and $10,000. And the sad part of it was within like a half hour, somebody gave him a check for $10,000. He had the check. Now, whether the check was good or not, I don't know. But I said, I can't take that check. The penalty hasn't been issued yet. You'll get a letter in overnight. But I don't know. And Snooki seems to think because she's a girl, she's going to get away with it. And I don't think so. She's a race car driver. All right? When they do start your engines, it's drivers. It doesn't say gentlemen and ladies or ladies and gentlemen. It says driver. You're a driver. You got to follow the rules like all the other drivers have to follow. That's what I'm just saying. Just saying. But anyway, it's just one of those things. Just one of those things that just, how do I put it? You have to laugh. You have to laugh because that's pretty slick. I mean, what? It wasn't a bad wreck she was in, so it's not like she got a bell rung. If the rule is, if the wreckers come, they got to tow you. You got to take a ride in the ambulance, and you got to get out, and you got to do your thing, and you got to answer all the questions. What's your name? What's your birthday? What are you doing here? What day is it? Who's the president? And I don't know who the president is. Well, I know who the president is, but they start asking those questions. I don't know those answers sometimes. I don't know. You get your bell rung. I don't know, but it's all good. It's all good. But anyway, there are a lot of talks going on. Again, I'm going to go back to the Riverhead Raceway purchased by Eddie and his wife Connie Partridge. And a lot of people are talking about, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? What are they going to do? How are they going to do it? Is he going to keep it a racetrack? Is he going to sell it and make his own? Is he going to close it and make his own? Only Eddie knows those questions. I know he bought the racetrack with a commitment to Barbara and Jim Cromney that he was going to keep it a racetrack. I know years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, he was trying to build another racetrack down the road in Calverton, which is only maybe 5 miles away from Riverhead Raceway, on property that he owned. I don't know if that's in the plan now, but for some reason people call me and they ask me, I don't know, I'm not in the inn, and I just do my thing. But Eddie Partridge is a businessman. He's a businessman. He's just a very successful businessman, and it'd be interesting to see moving forward what plans he has for the racetrack. There's a lot of things that can't be done to the racetrack only because of certain restrictions by the town. It cannot be made any bigger. So you have your quarter-of-a-mile racetrack situated where it is. A lot of the property, I believe, is 26 acres, and a third of it is not usable. It's wetlands. You can't do anything to it. You got to keep the trees where they are, and you can't build on it. And the water table there is very high. You only have to dig down a couple of feet, and you're in water. I was witnessed a couple of years back when the infield of the racetrack was underwater for the first month of the season, because there was nowhere for the water to go. It was a crazy winter and a lot of snow and a lot of rain, and there was nowhere for the water to go. So it's not like you can go in the back half of the property and build a 3/8 mile racetrack, which everybody would love to see. But don't be surprised in the next 3 to 5 years that the old, what was called the Calverton Motor Speedway, not in the Grumman Airport spot in the defense plan, but on his property. Don't be surprised to see, in my opinion, another racetrack being built. I don't think he's going to close Riverhead Raceway. He didn't spend all that money to buy a racetrack to close it. But what I can see happen is this. One track runs on a Saturday night, one track runs on a Friday night, or on a Sunday afternoon. But I'm thinking it'll be a Friday, Saturday gig, and it'll be a Long Island champion. You race both places, and your total points go. Just like in the old EKRA, the Eastern Kart Racing Association, and the Long Island Kart Racing, or LICA as it was called, and what they needed to do. What they started doing is running a lot of what they called interclub races, and then they added up your points, because you got points, you got a nice prize at the end, a nice trophy, and they called it the Interclub Champion. And I thought that was a good deal. I thought that was an awesome deal. And you got your points and your race. So I could see that happening. I really can. And you're looking forward, and a lot of people saying, oh, what officials are coming back? Which ones aren't? Is this one coming back? Is this one, not? I don't know. Why people ask me this, I don't know. I'm not in the know there. And people ask me if I'm coming back. That conversation has never been had since the purchase. So, we'll see what happens. But I will tell you, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the new ownership. I'm excited about the fresh blood, and hopefully brings new people in. And I had this conversation with somebody not too long ago. When you buy a new house, you bring in your furniture. You don't use the people's furniture that's there. Just, no matter how good the furniture is, you bring in your own couch, your own bedroom set, your own kitchen set. You don't use theirs. And I don't know. I would like to see a whole fresh blood, a whole thing of new people, a whole contingent of new people moving forward. And knowledgeable people. And a lot of people say, oh, they got to go out of state and get new. No, you're not going to do that. You just have to find good, honest people that want to do a good job. And everybody wants to do a good job. Don't get me wrong. Nobody wakes up to go to their job, and go do a bad job. But and I know WJ, the town of River does say that only one track allowed in the town, but that could change too. That could definitely change too with the right influence, the right money, and the right, I don't want to say, how do I say this? The right professionalism. And even if it has to do with race dates and knowing what I know in regards to trying to purchase the racetrack a few years back with a group, a lot of that stuff was put in there by people who didn't want the races, and there was the Raceway Commission. There was one guy that was the Raceway Commission. He's no longer there, so a lot of these rules can and may change. But I never hoped to see Riverhead Raceway close, and I did say that. Yes, I did. I watched ISA Speedway close, and it broke my heart. I wasn't a big Freeport guy, but it was a racetrack that closed, nonetheless. They're not building any new ones anytime soon. Just we were talking about that at the reunion yesterday. Most of the tracks that are around, at least in the weekly series, were built in the 50s and some in the 40s, and not too many in the 60s. And there were tracks you could race. You could race on Long Island 7 nights a week back in the day. Now it's maybe 20 times a year, and if you're a late model or a figure eight guy, maybe 10. So hopefully Eddie sits down and with his advisors or his people or whoever, Eddie and Connie, I should say, and work all of this out. And I know he's kind of keeping a low profile, and because of the arrangement he made, yes, he does own the place, but Barbara and Jim Cromedy are going to run the place till the season's end. And I'm interested to see what happens the Sunday after the last event. I really am. I think there's going to be some prizes. And I heard a lot. I didn't hear all. I spoke to one driver who's going to remain nameless, and he said he's taking a wait-and-see attitude. And I hope they all come back. There's a lot of cars sitting. There's a lot of cars that drive past that place to go upstate, down to Jersey, and up to Connecticut. They should be racing at their local racetrack home, getting sponsorship, local sponsorship, growing the business of the businesses here on Long Island. It's just my opinion. That's what I'm thinking. But anytime you go into a new venture, it's kind of tough. It's kind of overwhelming. But Eddie's a smart guy. Eddie and his wife, they work very well together. Yeah, he does have a car that races, goes to modified, races on the tour. Is that to say that modified is going to come and race at his home track? I don't know. Those are the questions only Eddie and Connie can answer. He's the tire distributor. He's a fuel distributor. Is he going to stay as that? You know what? He could stay at that, and I'm going to tell you a little secret on how that should be run. He needs to have somebody run it for him. Yeah, he could still own it. Why not? He's a fair man, and he's always done the right thing for everybody he's ever touched. He's never hurt nobody, as far as I know. He's never shafted anybody. He's a soft-spoken man, and I can remember back in the day when him, Eddie Partridge, and Joe Bertuccio be in my office and having a discussion about something went on a racetrack, and Eddie still maintained his professionalism. And not that Joe Bertuccio is unprofessional. Joe Bertuccio he goes. And that's just him, that's his style. And I know, in looking back on those days, and I'm going to share a quick story, got to wrap up soon. Eddie Partridge had Bo Gunning and I believe Mike Curtis driving his cars, and there was JR, and I forget who was driving, there was another car. And they were wrecking each other week after week, and it was just ugly. And I had to bring them both in the trailer. What are we going to do to resolve this? And Joe Bertuccio said, Eddie, how many cars you got? And Eddie, I don't know, 5, 6 cars. I got 5. Why don't we come on Sunday? We'll just have a race with all our cars, just our cars. And we're racing until there's one car left. The guy who's still racing, they stay here. The guy whose cars are all gone, he doesn't race. And Eddie just looked at him and said, that's ridiculous. And he looked at me and goes, you're gonna let I'm not letting that happen, come on. But it's just one of those things. And I understand that Eddie's nephew he's the general manager, if I read the press release right. Eddie's nephew is actually the general manager. But you still gotta get your staff and your officials and even the support staff people, the concession stands, the ticket takers, the vendors, the foods people, the beer guy, the souvenir stand, all of that stuff, A lot of people think you go to your racetrack as a race owner and you Saturday morning you show up, put the key in, open the gate. That's not how it works, folks. There's Sunday through Friday that has to happen. There's people that have to maintain the racetrack. They got to cut the lawn. They got to repaint the walls, repaint the lines, repaint the arrows. Keep the place clean and neat. There's a lot that can be done to spruce up a racetrack. And I know there's a lot of things that they cannot do just because. I'm not going to get into the politics of that. But I'm looking. I'm going to say it again. I'm looking forward to 2016, and what's going to go on there. And do you need 7 divisions? I'm sure that's going to be looked at as well. Do you need 7 divisions at a weekly racetrack? I don't think so. Because anytime you start a new division, you don't get new drivers and new cars. You get the back markers from other divisions who think now they have a shot. So you're kind of watering down your talent. But if anybody would have asked me, I don't give away a lot of information for free, so if anybody would ask me my opinion, I'll tell them, but that's going to come at a cost. Like I said, I'm a business development marketing guy by trade, and I have some ideas, and if the time ever comes when my services are asked, I will be more than happy to share my ideas, but I'm not going to do it to 7.1 billion people in the world who InRadio.com on the 505 Racing Show. I'm not going to do that. But I'm sure Eddie has the right people, Eddie and Connie have the right people in place to make this happen. And with his nephew's a bright guy, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing as a businessman. I don't know what his background is, but if Eddie picked him to be the general manager, the guy knows what he's doing. And John Elwood, who's been the facilities manager at the racetrack and for the last couple of years, has done a spectacular job with the limited resources he has, trying to keep the place nice. So it should be good. It should be good. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up here. I got a couple minutes left, but again, WJ, it's good to see you in the chat room. So we hope you're feeling, as good as you can. It's always good to see WJ, and at the reunion yesterday too. So Mike Fields at the reunion, from one of my old radio mates back in the Jeff Bressler and the late Rick and Miller days with the Long Island, with the Speed Racing Radio as part of the MRN network that we were part of. Back then, it was always a good time. So it was good talking to Mike about those days and his column and anyway. He learned. Well, it was good to see everybody. A happy 76th birthday to Marty Himes. Because this reunion has to do it in conjunction with his birthday, so we all had a piece of cake at the end. And WJ, glad to hear it, man. It's day to day, day by day. We battle the fight. It's like racing a race, one lap at a time. One lap at a time. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up. Those who won T-shirts in the last couple of shows, I will get them to you. Mr. Freeport's going to need his ticket to get his 22 figure 8. We're going to hook up and take care of yours and your girls, and it'll be all good. We're going to continue to do some not raffles, I shouldn't say, some giveaways and contests to make it happen. So don't forget to check out our other shows here at InRadio.com. And wherever your endeavors will bring you this week, please be safe. Have a good time. Be sure you tell somebody you love them today. Give them a hug. God bless you all, and we will see you next Monday here at InRadio.com on the 505 Racing Show. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being a part of this.